This is the Simpit. I'm your host, Sean Cole, and today we're here to check out the Thrustmaster TCA Captain Pack X Airbus Edition. This is quite a package for Flight Sim, and it is our first Flight Sim review ever on the show. And this is the quick style version. I did a very long version. If you want every last detail about this thing, you can check out the link in the description. This is just for the people who need to know everything in a short amount of time. So let's get things started. The whole package is going to set you back $299, and that is Xbox compatible and PC. Sorry to all the Sony PlayStation flyers out there. So with that, you get the stick and the Quadrant, but they also sell this a la carte, mostly in the case of for the PC. The stick on its own is $90 for the PC edition. They sell it as an Xbox edition for $120, but with that, you will not be able to add the add-ons later. In the PC scenario, the $90 stick, and then the central Quadrant with the throttle is $120, and the add-ons with the speed brake and the flaps is another $110. So starting with the stick, it is all mostly made of plastic. Everything I can see and feel is made of plastic. It's in this cool Airbus blue color that I really do like, and you have a bunch of buttons on the base of the stick. You got 7 on each side, and then 3 more jeweled at the front. The 7 ones, they are flush with the base, and that makes them a little hard to differentiate one button from another, and you will find yourself looking down. And you do have a throttle, so that you've got a full throttle lever here. It's very plasticky and gamey, but it gets the job done. And it even has a little detent here at the bottom for reverse thrusters. So far we can do all the flying we need. The only other thing I'd need beyond a normal stick would be a rudder, and you do have that rudder control built in, and it even has a lockout function. So if you're using rudder pedals, you don't need to have that stick twisting. The spring tension on the stick itself is actually really nice. It's a medium tension, which means it's going to prevent any movements in the wrong direction. You're going to have to be pretty deliberate in your actions, and it's not so heavy it's going to wear you out. It's actually a good amount of feeling for a non-force feedback stick, in my opinion. The stick itself is a replica, one-to-one replica of the real Airbus configuration in terms of shape and size, but it has a few additional features you won't find on the real plane. Starting with this red button, that is a real button on the real plane, and so is this trigger. And then we have this additional black button on the other side. These are modules. You can actually pop these off, and you can put a red one on the other side. You can flip them. You can put 2 red, 2 black, whatever configuration you like, and that's a nice little add-on. And then you've got this hat switch on top, which works out great for looking around or doing map control configurations. And the only other thing I'd really mention is we've got 2 USB plug-ins. One would be for the Quadrant if you're using it, and the other would be for Thrustmaster rudder pedals if you're using those. We have a USB plug-in to the computer and a switch between PC and Xbox, a 3.5mm jack to extend your headphones, which is really nice. Now the Quadrant, this is what makes the whole package to me. It makes it so realistic. It is exactly like the Airbus A320. When you look at the pictures, it almost looks identical. Slightly different layout on the lower panel, and it is about 2/3 the size when you talk about the thrust levers, which are plastic, and you can hear those detents, real strong detents, which correspond with the real detent positions in a real A320. And then, of course, you got these reverse thrusters, which you lift those safety levers, and it goes back into reverse thruster. And when you push forward, you can see them lock back into position. And you can actually turn those off. You can actually lock them into the up position, and you would get the full range of motion out of that throttle. So a lot of options there, including the ability to turn off the detent by removing a tab on the bottom, and then you would no longer have a detent, just full motion, no clicks. Same thing goes with the speed and air brake. I have the tension on all 3 of these cranked up to their max, which is about medium tension. I would definitely like to see more tension out of this, but it definitely feels cool, and I have no real complaints. I would just want more tension, maybe a little bit more metal feel than this, because I think the real ones probably don't feel this hollow and plasticky like this. You can remove this bar and move these independent if you want independent left and right control, or leave them locked together. And then there's a little extra button on each side as well. The lower panel, it is configured just like the real Airbus, slightly different layout. You've got a lollipop, which is a single button on and off. Depending on the software, it should work, or in some cases you might need to do a workaround. Same thing with the automatic brake setting for the A320. Those are a bunch of different button positions, and some sims might not like that so much. On-off switch for the engines, buttons for cranking them, different positions for the engine functions, rudder trim, parking, brake, and an extra button right there. So you can see you've got all sorts of functionality built into this entire system. And at only $299, I feel like they give you quite a bit of hardware, even though it's not a super cheap price. Mounting on the bottom is easy. You've got an M6 hole on the base of the joystick. You've got several M6 holes on the bottom of the throttle quadrant, so if you want to hard mount it, you will. But I did find it stayed in place on a desk pretty well, except for when I was doing erratic flying. So when it came down to flying, in Microsoft Flight Simulator, it was absolutely a delight to fly the 320. A lot of the challenges are in the 320. You will map everything. You don't even have to think about it. You just look down and do exactly what the plane has. When you're looking around the cockpit, you'll see the same type of layout or very, very similar layout, and it just makes flying that plane a pure joy. Now, even in a Cessna or any of the other planes where it's not specifically built, I've found that just about any time I've ever flown a flight sim, regardless of what joystick I was using, I had to map things differently from plane to plane. Some didn't have retractable landing gear, some did. Some would have more flat positions than others. So there's always some configuration and workarounds to be done, and it just kind of depends on what way you lean. So if you're really into like the commercial jets, this is going to be a great option. But if you're like a bush flyer going on the Cessna with big balloon tires and short landings, this might not be the ideal stick, but you're going to find a variety of different sticks from Thrustmaster, including a Boeing variation, which is a lot more money, but would be a better stick if you're really into flying the big Boeing jets. And then they even make like the new AVA stick, which is built for the Super Hornet. So if you want a combat configuration, that would be a great option, or the original A10 Warthog. But again, you're going to find yourself constantly doing the workarounds, things like landing gear, flaps, and various different control surfaces of the plane that don't go from one plane to another to another. So when it came down to flying, I loved the tension in the stick. It was just the right amount to not wear me out. But again, it prevented me from getting those extra movements. When I wanted to bank left, it was really easy to bank left without adding a lot of up and down, which is easy to do with lightweight joysticks, and even more so on the rudder. I never got any extra rudder control except for when I was demanding it by twisting my hand. So that part worked out great. The throttle, when doing that at 320, was just too awesome. I mean, just the whole experience in the 320 was awesome because of that kind of one-to-one feeling. It adds the immersion, it adds to the fun, it adds to just the level of authenticity. So overall, I really did like this flight system quite a bit. Force feedback is something that I wonder about, so I just, as a non-pilot, I mean, I've been doing flight sims all my life, but I'm not a real pilot like I can say about racing cars. And I don't know how much force feedback is really needed. It's something that my brain always wants. I always like that feedback on a trigger. But a lot of the flight sticks that I find are not force feedback, so I'm thinking maybe it's something that isn't that needed, and probably even less so when we're into the world of fly-by-wire like the 320. So when it comes down to it, let's talk about my favorite three things about this stick. Number one, it is absolutely the authenticity. You don't even have to think about it. Everything is what it is on the real plane, and that just makes that so much more fun on that particular plane in Microsoft Flight Simulator. The other thing is, I think you get a lot for your money. $299 isn't giving them away. For $299, it's one of the least expensive quadrant and stick combinations. And when you add the authenticity, it just makes it that much better. And then lastly, of course, is the modular design. And I think that kind of helps on the cost factor, being that you could just get this stick for $90 for PC users and then add the other pieces as needed or desired. So those are definitely my favorite things about this combination. Now, with that, there's always things that could be improved or things that I could like more, and I think that overall plasticky feel is probably the number one thing that I don't like about the stick. Beyond that, I talked about the force feedback, and I'm going to be the first one to admit that I could be wrong, but I just feel like a force feedback wheel would be that much more fun. And the last thing I really don't like, I guess, would be these flush buttons. If you're using just that stick, I just found it really hard to differentiate one button from another. So in the end, I think it's a little bit like we talk about steering wheels. Choose your weapon. Would you rather have a round wheel for NASCAR, or an oval wheel, or sort of a flat bottomed wheel, or a formula wheel? You're going to pick the right wheel for the type of driving you do the most. And I think for a lot of pilots out there, it'll come down to what is their main thing. Some of us just dabble, jump in, fly a variety of planes. And a lot of other pilots take it a lot more seriously, and they really learn the nuances of certain planes. And if Airbus is your thing, you want to have that stick on the left like an Airbus captain would, then this is going to be the best stick in the world for you. If you do a lot of combat flight sim, well, you might find one of the combat sticks is going to be a better alternative. But in the end, I think this is a good stick. It allows anyone to fly any type of plane and have endless options. And it was actually really enjoyable. And I hope you enjoyed this, our very first flight sim hardware review we've ever done. You can count on seeing more of these in the future. And if you want to know every last detail, of course, check out that very lengthy full-length review of this exact package, and I have a link in the description below. Beyond that, thank you for watching. Be sure to thumbs up this show if you enjoyed it. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you can find out when our next video comes out. This is the Simpit. I'm Sean Cole, and I'll see you on the track.